Welcome to another episode of the Manufacturing Executive Podcast. I'm Joe Sullivan, your host and a co-founder of the industrial marketing agency Gorilla 76. So I've noticed a trend in recent conversations I've had with leaders of manufacturing organizations. What they're telling me is that the younger workforce in manufacturing is looking for more from their leadership than previous generations have. Millennials in particular are more interested in the why of what the organization is doing instead of just the what. And they want a voice in the continuous improvement of the company. As my guest today will tell you, instead of dogging on the millennials, which seems to be the common practice for many of us, we need to be embracing the energy, the curiosity, and the brain power that these younger members of the workforce are bringing with them. So on that note, let me introduce our guest. Paul Brauss is a seasoned manufacturing leader that has championed company transformations built on lean manufacturing techniques. Throughout his career, Paul has aligned companies' customer-centric focuses around business process improvement, key driving metrics, and gaining involvement at every level of the organization. Paul holds a Bachelor of Science in Industrial Management and an MBA from Washington University in St. Louis, which also happens to be my alma mater. Paul is the former CEO of Mark Andy and has served on industry leadership panels, published articles, and is a past board member of the Tag and Label Manufacturers Institute, as well as a current board member of AAIM Employers Association. Paul recently published his book, Dare to Improve Your Legacy, and it highlights a label and packaging printer's journey with continuous improvement as a methodology for educating the next generation of leaders to assume the business. As a consultant and executive coach, Paul continues to help organizations with their organizational development, focus on continuous improvement implementation, and business succession. Paul, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Joe. I appreciate the opportunity to participate in the program.
Awesome. Well, congrats on the book being released. And I'd love for you to start by talking a little bit about the book. Dare to Improve Your Legacy is what it's called. And I think it's hot off the press, right?
It is. Just released on Amazon in October of 2020. So starting to get some nice hits on it. Appreciate that. The journey of the book was really, the beginning of it was a case study that I was writing because I work with a lot of leadership teams and they're always curious of how to get started on a journey of continuous improvement. They think it's really a scary, ominous beginning. And what I was trying to convey in the book is it's easier than you think. And you're already doing some good things in your company, but let's put it together in a way that makes sense so that you can continue this process and pull every bit of the organization together. Well, that article led into the book, and I had a friend of mine really encouraging me. I was helping his family in the business, and he really encouraged me to go ahead and finish the book as a story that a lot of the converters in the printing industry could relate to.
That's great. And so my understanding is that the book is written almost as a story with characters, right? It is as opposed to a traditional business book, which I think is interesting. I'd love to hear a little bit more about sort of what inspired you to write it that way.
Well, I've met a lot of leadership teams and I met a lot of family businesses, and a lot of their problems are the same, no matter if they're in a fabrication company, an assembly company, machine shops, they all come across the same sort of problems. And so I pulled together an amalgamation. I made up a family that a lot of people, when they read a story, think that I could be talking about their family business and I could be talking about their management team. And so I pulled this group of different experiences together, and I created a family that's going through not only the need to improve their business, but also the generational transition. So as we move from one generation to the next, the fun thing about it is the kids that are listed in the book are all named after my grandkids. So it gave me a little inspiration to do that and bring their personalities and the personalities of my own kids into the characters as well.
I think that was a really interesting decision to write it that way. And it stands out because it's different. There's so many business books out there that lots of good ones, lots of not so good ones,
Right.
but it's just simply changing the format. Have you ever read The Servant by James C. Hunter? There's a servant leadership
No, I
sort
have
of
not.
parable, similar sort of
No.
thing there. I'm sure some of our listeners are familiar with that one on the topic of servant leadership, but it was written in a similar way where
Mhm.
it told a story essentially to illustrate the point, and it really resonated for that reason. So I like that you took that approach. I got a copy of your book right on my desk, but I just got it the other day, and so I need to dive into it still. But
Good.
great. Well, so you've also written a bunch of great content out there online, and there was an article that I know you recently wrote that where you touched on some observations about the changing workforce, and I wanted to
Mhm.
talk to you a little bit about that. I'm gonna quote you here. You wrote, the workforce of today is looking for more engagement, understanding, and visualization that will lead to their ideas becoming implemented and provide a sense of community in the organization. Can you unpack that one a little bit for us and tell us what that means for manufacturing executives?
Yeah, I think I can. I grew up in a manufacturing environment, and a lot of the work that I did was on the production floor. And the old school, the old way of thinking was, we have a way we're gonna do these processes. We're gonna build this product. Just follow the way and do it. Don't ask questions. Just go get it done. There was a lot of talk about getting it done faster. We need more product out the door, but there was never a way for uh, me as a worker on the production floor to communicate back up the chain, so to speak, on things that I knew could be done to improve an operation of the organization. And so when you so we grew up that way. So that was my generation of work, and we accepted it. Today's generation, and I know this from participating in AIMS, the Employee Association, and speaking with these people that are on the floor today, they want to know why. There's this curiosity they have, the workers have today, that is so compelling. And if we can feed that curiosity and engage them in participating to help us do our jobs, I'm finding that we've got much happier workforce as a result of that. And a happier workforce means less turnover. It means better ideas coming from the floor, quicker improvements being made. And so I really was concerned about hearing conversations about millennials and the expectations that they have. And I am out there refuting that, saying this is the brightest workforce, the brightest generation we've ever seen, and it's our obligation to tap that capability and to tap that resource to become better manufacturers moving forward.
Yeah, I really like your perspective on that. I think we're all, I don't know. Technically, I could be considered a millennial. I'm 38. I think like in some classifications, but I don't feel
Right on
like
that
one.
upper border, yeah, yeah.
But I don't feel like one certainly, and most of my team is, and I think it's. My business partner John and I, when we're having our gripe sessions about all sorts of things, we tend to dog on millennials, right? But I think you're so right that there's so much curiosity and the why, right? You said it, like the
Yeah.
why, as opposed to tell me what to do. It's they want to understand why, they want to contribute to the bigger picture, and it's such a huge thing that we can all harness. It's just there's this energy there that I didn't get to experience the prior generation really, but it's something that I need to remind myself not to overlook sometimes.
Well, and as leaders, the biggest challenge we have is we want to tell them what to do. We want to tell people what to do. It's in our nature. It's how we grew up. And what I'm encouraging in the book and in the articles that I've written is sometimes you got to take a step back. As a leader, you got to take a step back, put the overview of where you want your company to go, and let them go try things. I was fortunate in my career that I had worked for bosses that allowed me to do something. Even when I made a mistake, they allowed me to do it. And because of that, I think I learned faster and I became a better contributor to the company. And I think that's what we need to do. That has to be part of we do as leaders is to create this vision, a path to get to that vision, and then get out of the way and let these new employees, the new generations, and it's not just millennials anymore. Now we've got Generation Z coming on board, and we've got to prepare the millennials and to become our new leaders.
Mm-hmm.
That's where it's going.
Oh, you're right. So what are ways that manufacturing leaders can, start to foster this involvement from their teams and start to move from less of a top-down leadership approach where the president is driving every decision to one where he or she is instead supporting the activities of the team?
Well, I think the first step that I do with a lot of the companies is I go in and I do a macro business map, a process map of how the business works from the time they engage a customer through the handoff of an order to the manufacturing arena. We call that the pre-order process. And then I map from the time they get that an order is received all the way through fulfillment of that order. And it actually could include collection of that order. So by process mapping it, it's interesting to pull a network of people in after they've seen this rough draft on a wall and hear their perspective of how they do a particular process step. And in several of these companies, what you find out is as operators start talking, they go, well, I don't do it that way. I do it a different way. And you find out that in the scheme of things, everybody's got their own twist of something. And because there's been no focus on the business processes, the process quality is really bad. And so that's the first step is find out what the process really is and find out what you want it to be so that you can get the desired results. And in my training from the Thomas Group years ago, we called that, what's the process entitled to do? If we took out all of the barriers, if we took out all of the roadblocks to a process, how fast could it be done? How good could it have been done? And that's the process entitlement. And that's what we're really looking for.
Yeah, so many problems within a business. I think, from my experience, I run a marketing company, co-lead a marketing company, but it's a lot of the same things. It's, I can step back and my business partner, John, can step back when people understand the way something needs to play out and they were a part of it, of developing that process as well. Right. So, but so many of the problems that we see stem directly from confusion around processes and accountabilities.
Well, and then the next thing to do is so many times as leaders, we're talking about the results of our organization. So we're talking about earnings and we're talking about performance, but we're talking about it at a level that the typical production worker can't relate to. They don't. It doesn't grasp them in any way. So as a supervisor or leader, and I walk out and say, "Wow, our profits were down." And things are looking bad, an employee can't do anything with that information. So what we have to do is go find what the real drivers in the business were. So switch up our focus on metrics to focus on drivers and not the results. And so a driver could be something as simple as how many quotes did we get processed today? I don't know if they're good quotes or not, but how many did we get processed? What's our process capability? Because every sales organization wants to turn a quote over very, very quickly. So our driver is, well, how many did we get done and what stopped us from getting them done? So what was the quality problem we were having with processing more quotes? And that becomes, if we move to those driver metrics, the conversations change drastically.
In the article I referenced earlier, Paul, that you had authored, you mentioned something that caught my attention as a marketing guy. You said a production plant is one of the single best marketing tools a company has that demonstrates its capability. Can you tell us what you mean by that?
Yeah, in my experiences with Mark Andy, Alvey Systems, some of the other companies that I worked with, the sales team is really focused on getting the order off the street. So they got to do whatever it takes to excite that customer. If you have a facility that demonstrates it's clean, orderly, and productive, it demonstrates that, it looks that way, and that's we refer to that as the visual factory. And all these are a lot of lean principles that we pull together all the way through the company. But if your shop presents well and your salespeople can bring customers out onto your shop floor, your salesperson has confidence in the company because they see how it goes, and that company or that confidence really transforms so that the future customer that you have is all of a sudden gaining confidence in your organization as well. And so I think all of those sorts of things become selling features and selling points of why your company could be better than the competition.
It's a really good point. I've been inside of a number of manufacturing facilities over the years, given that our client base is mid-sized manufacturers of all different shapes and sizes. And there is really something to be said for, some facilities I'm inside of are kind of a mess. They're dirty. There's scraps on the floor. It's dark and dingy in there. Others are well lit. They're well ventilated. Everything's clean, and the impression that creates is can be really strong. Here's a little idea for those listening. We have one client of ours that is an equipment manufacturer. They're actually going to start, given this COVID era we're living in, where it's tough to be on the move and flying around the country and going into facilities. They're actually going to start doing Zoom-based demo requests where they're going to have a camera set up right inside their manufacturing facility, where you can kind of see the background and highlight what it looks like in there. And they're going to be standing next to their product and talking about it. And you can actually do a Zoom-based call with them in addition to having some recorded videos. And I think it's gonna work wonders for them, because you're kind of replicating some of those things that can be a little tougher to do in person. But it all comes down to the sort of the same point. Like if you can,
it is.
Yeah.
It's tougher out there. The sales guys have a very, very tough job. And so whatever an organization can do to help that sales process out is really important. And what was fun for me is when the salesman would be excited about the plant, they'd walk out there, many of them commenting to me, if I can get my customer onto our shop floor, I know I can close the order. And then the people on the shop floor are very curious, and they're like, did we get the order? Did we win? Because then they have this sense of I'm helping the company win by participating in doing this, and it makes for just a lot of fun to work in an organization like that.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point there, because you're not keeping the shop floor clean and for marketing purposes. Your keeping it clean to run a tight operation, but that will impact marketing. And then when your team knows that your marketing is going to be dependent on that, it kind of motivates people. And so it's kind of the cyclical thing, I feel like, that.
It's part of this whole engagement thing that we keep doing. The more you fuel it, the more it fuels itself. And the conversations on the shop floor changes drastically. And when they're talking about quality and they're talking about efficiency and they're talking about how to do things better, and as leaders, we're letting them do it. We're helping them do it because we're saying, how can we help? It just gets this momentum going that's contagious.
Yeah, I love that. Paul, leaders inside of companies, both inside and outside of manufacturing, have a tendency to be big idea people. Or if you're an EOS fan, visionaries. There's a lot of visionaries out there who have a lot of ideas, often up in the clouds, and I'm guilty of it myself. I fit the profile of the visionary perfectly. But you've referred to this problem that you've called starts control issues, where leadership tends to start a lot of new projects without a true understanding of what it'll take to actually execute and complete all of them. So how can manufacturing executives harness their own energy and excitement and really focus on starting the projects that matter the most instead?
Yeah, I think the first thing that they have to do is understand the impact of a starts control. It's a basic, simple equation. You've got ideas generating in an organization all the time, and whether you're doing an IT upgrade or whether you're doing an efficiency movement or a quality movement or any of those sorts of things, what you find is they tend to lead to a list of projects, a list of things to do. And as a leader, often I find that the leaders are out, well, yeah, let's go. They give the approval. Let's go upgrade that software. Let's go change this production method. Let's go buy some new equipment and implement it. On and on and on. In an organization I was working at down in Southern Missouri, we pulled everybody aside and said, well, let's just talk about the improvement initiatives we have going on. How many are there? And we counted 47 active improvement initiatives. Okay, and this is by a plant of 180 people, something like that. And we then asked, well, how many were we getting completed? And what we found is we weren't completing many at all. So out of the 47, because we were working on them with a small group of people, I'll call it resource constrained activity, we couldn't get anything accomplished. So we couldn't make any of the improvements last because we weren't completing them. So in this example, what we did is we shut down about 40 of those projects and said, we're not going to not do them. We're going to backlog them. We're just going to move them over here. I don't want any resources to work on these. And let's take the resource and pool it up and go after these 7 projects. And let's get these 7 done. And as we get one done, then we'll start a new one. And so we had to find whatever that balance was in the company. Some companies can only do 3 at a time, but because of that, we were getting those projects implemented quicker, more successfully. And in reality, because we were doing that, some of the projects that were on the backlog list, we didn't need them anymore because we had fixed something else that was more important that we could get to now. So it was about pooling resources, stop starting so many projects, and let's focus on completing some projects. Backlog them. If they're good projects, they'll still be there, and you can pull them over when you've completed a few. But let's take that resource that we have. Sometimes we do it as Kaizen teams. Sometimes we do it as a cross-functional team in a particular area of the company. But let's keep it to a minimum of how many we start so that we can go finish it.
I think that's so great. I mean, what you basically just described is there were 47 projects, and because there were 47 projects, they were getting a few of them done, and then you go, let's strip it down to 7 projects. Now you get 7 done. So, and all the wasted time on things that were never completed goes away. So you get all that time back. And like you said, they stay there. It reminds me of our company started implementing EOS in late last year, and it's sort of the same idea as having your priorities for the year, your goals for the year, and breaking them down into quarterly rocks and saying these are the things we're going to get done, and we are going to get them done.
Right. And then find the resources, man it up, find the resources that you can do it, find the people that are smart in your organization that perhaps know about the process and can contribute it. Pull those people from every area in the company, but concentrate them in what we call quick hit project improvement initiatives.
That's great. Paul, is there anything you'd like to touch on that I didn't ask you about today?
Yeah, the biggest thing that I run into with the leadership teams is this hesitation to get started on a continuous improvement process. And we're coming out of this COVID nightmare that we've had to live through. I see a lot of robust activity ahead of us, especially in manufacturing. There's an emphasis to really focus on U.S. manufacturing and U.S. made again that I love. I love that focus. And the encouragement that I want to have for leaders is figure out your plan, but you got to get started. Continuous improvement is not something you do extra as you go to work in the morning. It's how you're going to do the work. And so if you can get that into your mind about changing the way you want to go after your improvement initiatives in the company and changing the way you want to focus, and that's on processes, driving metrics, and quick hit Kaizen projects. If you want to change your mind to do that, let's jump in and let's go do it. Stop wringing the hands. Stop slowing down. Don't hesitate. you got to get going. You got to take that first step. And so a lot of leaders are quite hesitant of that. And I'm saying now is the time not to be hesitant. It's the time to drive. And so I encourage that.
Just start, right? You got to start.
Yep.
Well, fantastic. Paul, this was a really good conversation. I appreciate you sharing your wisdom and taking the time out of your day to talk to our audience.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity, Joe. It really does mean a lot.
Great. Well, can you tell our listeners where they can get in touch with you and where they can learn more about your consulting services in case it may make sense for them?
Sure. It's Brauss Consulting. You can look up our website, braussconsulting.com, and we're readily available there. I'm on LinkedIn. If you want to just link into me and ask a few questions, happy to have a conversation. My email address is pbrauss@braussconsulting.com. Pretty simple. So give me a note and we'll get you started. And the book is now available on Amazon. I appreciate you plugging that for me a little bit. I think once some people read that, I know leaders that have read it already have called me and said, I think I want to do this. I think I can do this. And I'm encouraged by that.
Well, that's great. So that's Paul Brauss, Brauss Consulting. That's Brauss. And Paul's book, as he mentioned, is Dare to Improve Your Legacy. So go check that out on Amazon. And based on everything I've heard from you today, Paul, I'm excited to dive into it myself. So
great. Thanks,
awesome.
Joe.
Awesome. Well, thanks once again, Paul. And as for the rest of you, I hope to catch you on the next episode of The Manufacturing Executive.